pit, man. I'd have that fucking done in 4 hours. No, not me. I'm slow. So in here's my bench. I've got the wheel bearings soaking in diesel fuel here just to keep them, A, to dissolve the old grease, and B, to keep them out of the elements and out of the moisture and the dust. So they're just chilling in some diesel fuel there. I've got the spindles here, and it turns out that they are pretty good shape. The lip seals were completely fried on them, and they were starting to get dried out, but they didn't get ruined. So they've just been cleaned thoroughly, and we'll get new seals in them, but I'm not going to pull those bearings out, mainly because I don't have the tool to do so. Finally got the hardware to fix this stud right there, so we'll probably go ahead and take care of that. I think that's the only one I need to worry about. We'll see.
So, you're going to need some Timken wheel bearing grease or something similar. I chose this because it's 100% synthetic. It's really good, but the only thing is it's not compatible with the old sodium-based grease. So you need to make sure to clean all that stuff out first before you install the new grease. A couple tools you'll need: some snap ring pliers, a mechanic's pick, and of course this special tool with the 4 teeth to put in your lock nut. It says not for impact use, so you don't really need to do that to install it. You can see here that it fits nice and neat inside of there. You'll need a torque wrench and of course a breaker bar to get more than 85 foot-pounds. So I've got the wheel bearing all done in here. I previously already pulled the seal. I cleaned the wheel bearing, I greased it, packed it, put a new seal in. And so we'll probably go ahead and pack even more grease in there, just to make sure it's good and saturated. And then here we have our drive axle and the spindle on the end. And if you take a look at the inside, you can see another needle bearing on the end of the drive shaft there, which actually has to line up in the axle housing. And the spindle just pops off right there. It's being held on by the lip seal, which I recently installed. And you can see that I've already packed some grease in here, obviously. But you can't put these into the axle housing together. They have to be separate. So that's what that looks like. We'll go ahead and add some more grease to that, add some more grease to the lip seal as well. And we'll start by installing the axle before the spindle back into the axle housing. And so now we'll go back to the steering knuckle and get this axle back into the axle housing.
So I know this one is good because it's brand new, so I'm not even tripping. But some of these other ones are questionable. Very questionable, especially like this one. This one doesn't look good at all. So I think I'm going to replace him. Anybody else that gives me trouble, I got a set of 6 of these things, and I don't think they're that hard to change. I mean, if I can get the threads started by hand, I'm just going to go with it because they're tempered grade 8 bolts. But you know, they can still be cross-threaded. This one here doesn't want to go on very easily, but I'm not going to give up on it like that easily. How's he doing? Is it nice and straight? If it looks straight, you know, I'll go ahead and run with it. If it doesn't, then I'm probably not going to use it. This one will probably be okay. It's questionable. It's like borderline. It's taking a lot of torque to get that thing going on there. Those threads look like shit. This one I definitely need to change because it looks terrible. This one's good. See, they should all be about like that, but I mean, if they start a little rough, but they still go on. So it's basically just these two here, so I'm definitely going to knock this one out. I will be back with a sledgehammer. Just hope these are as easy to take out. Yep. That's pretty much it. There it is. Out with the old, in with the new, and since that was so, well, that was pretty easy. Pretty easy. That one might not be as easy. The thing I fear on him is that ball joint right there. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Yep, it is what it is. Damn it, fucking oh, man. I mean, I might be able to make this work. It's just I do have to try. That's what it is. You gotta orient these so that the flat part is on the bottom. Does not protrude through where the spindle would be housed. Now it's bottomed out. This is super ghetto what I'm about to do, but it just might work. I'm going to try to chase this bolt. These are 3/8 by 24. Sweet. And then I'm just going to use channel locks to try to turn it. Man, these things suck. They're some rusty ass motherfuckers. Alright, it's actually working. This is definitely ghetto, but it's getting the job done. And it looks good. If you did a good job, you'll see a nice clean set of threads exposed on the other side. And I want to try to get at least a bolt's width exposed before I start cranking this the other way. It's getting really tight. Okay, that's good enough. I give up. There's about a bolt's length sticking out of the tap. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the tap die now. But it's still pretty tight, and these channel locks are just awful. They're just what I have right here, right now. I don't feel like having other tools, which I have to go and look for, or go retrieve from some truck somewhere. Although, god damn, it would speed things up. I give up this fucking piece of shit. Sometimes you just have to throw tools. Much better. At some point it should be pretty easy to remove That is how you chase a bolt. So I guess we were able to reuse that bastard anyway. Just to make sure that I'm still able to use it, I should be able to hand thread, no problem. Okay, so we're good to go on this. And the gear, I'm looking in the differential there, the shift housing there where the intermediate shaft connects to this one. And it's not quite centered, so when I install that shaft, which I'm about to do, it's going to have to go and push upward and then drive itself into that other piece there. But before I even do that, I'm going to grab some sandpaper and a wire brush and just clean up this inside bore. There's just lots of rust on the mating surfaces of this thing here, so I'm trying to make it as smooth as I can get it. Cool. So now that that's cleaned up, I'm going to go ahead and shove that axle shaft into this. There's a little bit of dirt in there, but I'm not too worried about that. That's normal to have dirt right there. A little bit of dirt and crud on the exterior of the axle housing is totally normal on a Dana 44. This splash shield goes on with the recessed side facing in towards the steering wheel.
What the hell did you just say?
All right, hey guys, so it's yet another day, and we're still working on the Dodge, believe it or not. So here we are, where I left off. But as you may have noticed, the scenery is a little different. There's no longer a jack stand. We've got the brakes up there instead of tied off over here. So what happened? I fucked up. See this right here? Put it on backwards. I put that stupid splash on backwards because it looks nice and neat if it goes on this way, but that's not correct. It in fact goes on this way. And what was happening is since I had this reversed, it was grinding on the other side here and right here. So I luckily I caught that while driving, but stupid of me. I was only following suit from the other side. You see, the previous owner of this vehicle put the other side on incorrectly, and I used that as an example. And I couldn't find any other examples in the book or on any online forums for the splash shield. So I was at a loss until I was making this horrible screeching noise driving around the road. So obviously it was the splash shield because it was riding up against the rotor. And so I'm going to pretend that never happened and that we just put it on correctly. This is the shade tree mechanic way. Any real mechanic will tell you never to do wheel bearings outside in a dirt lot. With good reason, but it can be done. There's lots of people do it. Want to torque these to 65 foot-pounds. It's a 9/16 wrench. Fairly common mistake, I hope. I mean, whoever worked on this truck last obviously made that mistake. My only saving grace was that this one was installed correctly. And so I caught it not only by driving it, but when I was actually editing this video footage for this video. The previous video footage that I had, I was like, wait a minute. I'm instructing these people to put this on backwards, aren't I? And I questioned myself right there and then. And I'm like, oh, now it all makes sense. That's why it's making so much racket. And I totally fucked up. So I went back to the disassembly video that I took and looked at this footage, and sure enough, it's installed just like this. So what I'm going to do is just make each bolt kind of touch the metal, and that's where I'm going to stop, and I'm going to go alternating triangles in a clockwise pattern here. Now these are starting to bottom out, and at this point I'm going to go look behind the spindle to make sure that the bore is like sitting flush. Looks good. It's kind of hard to see back there, but you can. And so now I'm going to just kind of start and get these torqued up. Go a little bit tighter next round, but not full torque yet. Everybody's at about 50 to 60, maybe not even that, maybe like 40 to 50 foot-pounds. I'm going to go ahead and round it up to the full 65 now. Okay, and then I'm going to do it again. Just to double check, I'm going to go around a circle for the last torque. So now we're all good to go. So, in here is a tub of diesel fuel. Here I've got my wheel bearing, which has been soaking in here for about a week. It's just been soaking, that's it. There's still some crap on it. You can see there's chunks of shit. That's just little chunks of grease. So basically we're just going to get rid of all that now. Now this is ready for grease. Next we throw on our hub, which already has the wheel bearings in it. They're greased. As you can see, there's our stuff right there. You can see the bearings in there already. So I'm going to try to keep it in there and pack some more grease in there. I want to make sure there's tons of grease in there, just enough to seal that bastard in there real good. There's two bearing surfaces here that you need to watch out for. There's this one right here. This bearing surface is your inner bearing surface, and this is your outer bearing surface right here, and this is in between, and this over here is the seal, the lip seal that goes over this right here. And then just very carefully slide it on there so as not to disturb the bearing. And then when you get it on, you gotta put your hand inside here and kind of guide it on there until it slides in place. Next we set our preload. Just way easy, way easy. Anybody can do this, even your grandma. You take the lock nut, that's this one here. What distinguishes it from the other one is it's got a tab built into it right here, and that tab needs to face out. So just simply start, make sure this is clean, of course. I got all kinds of dust and crap on it. Just make sure it's clean, especially the side that's going to mate against the bearing. You don't want any dirt to get in your bearing races or anything. Helps if you use two fingers to get this started on the threads, but once you get it going, once it's on there, grab the tool and use it. Just get this to where it's like finger tight. Preload is actually not that high. That's only about 15 foot-pounds. So get get that screwed on there. All the while making sure this thing spins both ways. So once you got it hand tight, you're going to grab your torque wrench, set it to about 25 foot-pounds. And what this is going to do is press the bearing and seat it. And then we're going to back off and re-torque it to about 15 pounds. But that's really just like hand tight. So that's all we're going to do. That's all the Chilton's manual calls for, and it seems to work pretty good. So we're going to lower this guy down to about 25. There's 25. Okay. And just slowly making sure this thing spins all the while. And we're at 25 now. Okay. And then you're going to back it up. Then you're going to tighten it by hand. Go as tight as you can, but you won't be able to go that tight. And then check your end play. Now there's a professional way to do this with a feeler gauge and all that fun stuff, or you can just that's acceptable. That's totally acceptable. And it spins nice and easy as that does. Go ahead and insert your lock ring. So to do this, you got to look inside. It's on the fucking, well, there it is, right there, at about 2 o'clock. So you have to orient the tab on the lock ring to match that. So there's the tab. That's gonna go at like 2 o'clock. Somebody's fucking emailing me some shit right now. It's not a good time. And if you did this right, I mean, you should go on, and that didn't line up. Okay. If it doesn't line up, try flipping the thing over a little bit. Just flip it over. And of course, it's good to know where your tab is. The tab is at about 7 o'clock. So, but it'll either line up or it won't, you know. Okay, that seems to line up just fine. So, yeah, you shouldn't have to turn the lock ring after you set that preload. And that should be flush. Make sure it's in the tab. There's a tab right here. The lock ring can go in anyway. Just get it started on there. So on this part here, setting the torque, I've heard varying things. The Chilton's manual doesn't even get into this kind of a Dayton 44 axle, so I had to rely on online information and like forums and other mechanics. And I've heard a bunch of different stories on how much torque to put on this outer lock ring. It's probably safer to put more torque than less. The lowest amount of torque I've seen is 50 foot-pounds. I'm going to put about twice as much on as that. 50 foot-pounds does not seem like enough to me. So what I do this in stages to kind of at least know I'm hitting a torque mount right here. So I take my torque wrench and I set it as high as it'll go, which is that's 85, maybe even 90, but 85 is about as tight as I can get it. So I'll use this to actually get it started,
And then I will actually do my final torque with a breaker bar to get about 100 to 120 foot-pounds of torque. So you have to basically push on the tool at the same time. So there's 85 foot-pounds. And it felt nice and flat, doesn't look bad at all. We've got a nice surface back there. Still doing good here. And so now I'm going to just torque it one more time using the breaker bar. I'm going to put all my weight on it. I'm only about 150 pounds. So depending on how strong and how heavy you are, so if I can get another 5-10 degrees out of here, I'll be happy. That's as tight as I can get it. About 5 degrees more. And so that was at least another 20 to 40 foot-pounds of torque. So 85, you do the math, it's at least 120 in my estimation. Some guys will say you need to put up to like 160 or 200 on there or something like that, but I'll let you guys know if my wheels fall off, you know. This is just a stop for the four-wheel drive gear to keep it from grinding against the thrust washer is what it is. It's what allows this gear to ride up against that so it doesn't hit the lock or washer that we just put in there and cause it to move. Just grab this guy, and sometimes you might have to go in it differently. Come on, there we go. Just turn it, kind of finagle it in there. There we go. It'll go, and that's for the four-wheel drive. I like this system, actually. It's super simple. Grab your lock ring and pop that in there. And then we're done. This goes in just about the same way as a seal. Just got to try to get it started. You're supposed to use sealant on here, but I've never had one fall out. There's enough shit in there that it just goes. It just fucking goes. Let's clean up all this grease and shit. Rotor, fun stuff. Not really into the rust color. The old air filter works perfect as a mask. So I'll just let that dry now. Paint should be fairly cured by now. Still got to be careful though. It just pops in there, and then you have these clamps, and you have this little spring edge here. This needs to go down on top of this, so when you bolt everything in, it should hold all of that good stuff into place. Just get it hand tight. Oh, and there's a washer. This little wing tab here goes to towards the spring. Make sure that's tight. Make sure that's tight. You gotta be careful with the wheel on so you don't fuck up the paint. It still hasn't completely cured.
Dodge is ready to roll.
It doesn't look that great, but it looks better than the rust. I have to say that. So cool.
So I'm finished lowering this stuff.
Ready to rock. And then we'll get started on the old brown truck.
Who's next?